Alright, so what I've done is basically glued that down and then put weights on it to make sure that I've got a nice firm hold to hold the bottom piece against where it's glued on the model, if you can see that. You know, again, if you're going to use super glue for that, which, you know, I guess you technically could, this would be a lot quicker than it's going to be for me. But what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to look ahead, because that's where one of the things you can do if you make sure you know what you're doing is there's a next piece that can build that actually is quite nice and separate. It stands alone from the piece that's there, and that is to build the cowling on the front of the model. So if I get my pieces out here, what I'm going to need to make that happen is lowercase q and a piece labeled S, and I can't quite read it, but I'm going to find it for you, and then M, L, K, and J. So that's quite interesting, because M, L, K, and J, when I did the unboxing, I thought that they were wheels, but they're not wheels. They're actually the cowling. So I'll find those pieces and I'll lay them out on the board just so I can show you what that is first. Alright, so I found those pieces, fairly straightforward. There's Q here, which will basically form the kind of the base of the cowling. There's R and S are the two pieces, and they're basically the same, and they form a T. So you can see them over here on the right hand, on this side of the hard sheet. There's R, there's S. They're basically exactly the same. And then you have this piece, which, as I said before, it was what I thought were wheels before, but actually they're going to form the cowling, and basically that will work by stacking them on top of each other to form a little tower. That'll actually look quite nice. And then you need this piece N, which, if you remember from the unboxing, I said it looked like planking. Well, actually what happens is that these pieces will sort of stack on top of each other, and this will actually wrap around. And what you'll need to do with these when you get to that point is soak it in water. Even though they're quite flexible, even if you try to bend it that extreme, it's going to break. So what you can do is soak it in water. I found it doesn't need it to soak for an awful long time until it becomes very, very flexible, and it'll be exactly what you need. So next step, I'll cut those pieces out, and then we'll dry fit it and make sure we know what we're doing before we move ahead to glue it. Alright, so I've cut out those pieces, and I just want to show you these because it's going to be quite important to make sure you get them in the right order, and to see how it all comes together. So basically we've got the Q, which is this round piece of harder wood that will go as the bottom. These two are S and R, and they will basically form a cross through here that basically will support the rest. Let's just see if that slides in, or if I'm going to have to do a little bit of tailoring to get that on. And then we've got the 4 pieces of round wood, and you need to make sure you get these in order, because you notice that they actually slot into these slots. So it'll be basically, it'll be J, and then K, and then L, and then M. So I mean, what happens is that the letters are on the middle of the pieces. So once you take the middle out, you lose the lettering, and then you're going to have to go back and figure out which order it needs to be. So so that's why I stacked them, so I can keep track of that, and so that's that all needs to come together. And then what will happen is the N will get bent around the base of it to form quite a nice looking cowling. So this is how the middle piece of the cowling looks once you've put it together, and Just sort of an FYI, but I showed it earlier in the video that when slotting those two, the R and the S in together, it was a really tight fit and it didn't want to go. So remembering the message I told you before, don't force it. What I actually did was I ended up, and I've shot it again back to earlier in the video, I think earlier in the build, I scraped down the inside of the slots very carefully with my trusty knife here, and it was just a sort of a little fine bit of scraping, try it, doesn't quite work, a little bit more fine scraping till it slid together cleanly. And then once that slid together, then I had the T-piece in place, the cross, and then this piece was a lot easier. Notice that there's 4 little sort of slots in that Q, just to the right of these round pieces here, and that just basically slotted in cleanly. So what happens next, and I wanted to show you this, I haven't actually done that part myself, is that what should happen is that each one of these should basically slide down over the outside, and if I've got them in the right order, then they just slot down over the very edge and push down, and so this one, which is the capital J piece, should just slide right over that very last step that you can see on the edge here. And already I'm finding it just a little tight. I don't want to force it. One thing you can do though with it's a bit of a difference between this hardwood and the balsa, the soft balsa. So the balsa is just that touch flexible and it can bend. So all I'm doing is where I need to get it over the lip and around the edge of that piece is just sort of pushing it out a little bit. I don't want to go too far, but I mean, I know that it's going to fit, right? This is cut for this piece. So what should really happen is that should just slide down over the edge quite nicely. And, you know, if I push too hard, I'm going to break it, so I don't want to do that. Yeah, it's not quite popping on, so I don't want to take a chance. I'm going to drop that out, and I think what I might do is just sand a little bit, just sand the edges of these things. Maybe it's just there's a few rough edges that are stopping that from sliding on cleanly. So I'm just going to sand down the edges of each one of these pieces here, just a touch. Shouldn't take too much, and this is a very fine sandpaper. I think I might have shown you before, it's an 800 grain sandpaper. And so basically just sand down any rough edges on those little steps on the side of this cowling mounting here. And once I've done that, I'm actually also going to just do a quick scrape down on those teeth as well, because I think, you know, it's just possible, just the tiniest little edge, a little jaggy piece of wood is sticking out and getting in the way of a clean fit, and when it slides on nicely, you know, it just can be the finest difference between when it slides on nicely and cleanly and just sort of clicks into place, and when you feel like you're forcing it and you're taking the risk of breaking something. And you know, this is it's not this really soft balsa like this one, but it's still a fairly soft piece of balsa. And you notice that especially where those slots are, you know, you do have to be careful. You could really break it, and obviously I don't want to do that. Worst case, I could glue it back in together if I do break something, which is, again, like I say, the nice forgiving nature of balsa wood itself. But you know, hopefully I don't get to that point. I really don't want to break this and then have to force it, so and have to glue it to fix something if I can get it right in the first place. So what I'm trying to do now is get back to the point where this round piece, which is the L, sort of slots on to the R and the S crosses, as you can see there. So now I've basically got it laid in place, and again just going to try and slide that over the edge of each one of those. What's going here is that it's sliding on nicely on this piece, which is the R-cross piece, and not quite so nicely on the other side. So I'm actually just gonna trim out that slot just a touch on the balsa side here. Just scrape that just a touch. Scrape that down just a touch. And really, when I say just a touch, I really don't mean very much, because the knife is sharp, the balsa is soft. You could really easily make it a really floppy join. We don't want that, so it's just the finest little scraping down the edge of that slot and the balsa wood. And we might want to cut just a little bit so that I've done something, but don't really want to take it too far. So now let's try that again. Try to fit that on there nice and cleanly. It does seem a little finicky, but honestly it will be worth it when you get past this piece and you see how it all comes together. It's actually going to look really sharp. So let's just, okay, we've got that seated comfortably on both sides. Have we? No, we haven't. Okay, so you want to get it down evenly first, and then once you've got it evenly on all three sides, make sure, because if you haven't got it even, then it's going to pull and it's going to break again. So we can just push that over a little bit over the edge there. Push that a little, yeah, you can feel the difference. That's actually sliding in now. And there, that one. So okay, so now we've got it. It slides in over, and it broke it. There we go. Great. All right, well, I guess I'll show you fixing it. So what we can do now is we've got the two halves, and it's actually fairly easy now to simply slide the two halves into the two slots they belong to. When I say easy, I think that's the reason why, because that slot there isn't going in easily. Let me just see if the other one will. Yeah, see, that slides in kind of nicely. So I think what had happened was I hadn't actually trimmed out that one slot too cleanly, and so I'm going to have to, yeah, so basically this will now slide in on that base piece there, and slot in, and then I'll join the two pieces at the edge here. That's what's going to happen. So let's just see how we go. I don't want to break any more, obviously, at this point. So one should be enough. One break, and I'm just having trouble getting that slotted in. Well, there we go. So that slots in nicely there. Okay, now I can feel it sliding in to where it's supposed to be, and that will then line up with those two pieces on that side. To form half of the circle, and then I'm going to have to, I'll just trim this slot here again. Obviously I didn't get it enough. I didn't quite get it wide enough so that it goes down. Onto that slot. I'll just cut away the edges a little bit, and yeah, guess what? Yeah, I should have persisted a little bit more. So that actually goes, that fits quite nicely on that side there, and this piece will fit on fine once once they're joined at that edge there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to resort to some CA, some super glue in this case, just to glue that one piece in place, and then I'll come back and glue the second piece in place as well. And yes, I'm just cleaning up this other slot because even though, I mean, it's sort of okay, I learned the lesson from forcing it. And right, so we'll go with those two pieces on here, and I'll pop out the super glue, aka CA glue. That's not it there. This is it here. And we'll just use the tiniest little bit of glue in each spot, really just to tack that in place. That's all it needs. You know, it almost would have stayed without the super glue previously. So there we go, just a little tiny piece of a touch, like a drop. I'm getting a little bit, okay, a drop there and a drop here. That's enough. And then a drop here. That's it, that's all I need. So now if I push that piece on, which we dry fitted before, into there, and then push these P2 pieces over to where they belong, then that should basically sort of tack in place there. And then we'll do the same thing with this piece on the other side, just to make sure that we've got the right way up, because they're matching pieces obviously. So so that piece and this piece actually match. So that then slots in there. And so initially what I'm relying on is that the super glue in the center to hold that, and then once I've got that in place, then I'll, yeah, see that's actually quite nice there. So I will pop a little touch of super glue underneath here, and a drop there and a drop here. Really, I mean, when I say a drop, I really do mean it, like just a drop. Okay, there we go. So now we can get these two pieces slotted into where they belong. This is the reason why I don't like super glue. It's because now what I have to do is I have to do it fast, get them right, and then and if I don't get it right, then it becomes tough to fix. So yeah, and also I have to be careful about gluing my fingers to things. So here, getting that to join, that to join. Oops. See, now I've glued my finger to the piece of wood and popped that off the join. Right, it's so finicky. But good news is that I still have it. In a sense, it didn't join the wood in this. It didn't join it to the wrong place. So let's get that right now. And join those two pieces together at that juncture where, okay, there we go. And I'm going to hold that so that the super glue can fix that into place. Almost like it's not holding. I think it's going to be fine though. Okay, there we go. Now it's tacked. It's held. Let's just get the pin back in the super glue so it doesn't. Okay, so now we've got to deal with the same thing on the other end. The same problem where the break that I made here, the break, that piece needs to connect in together. So actually I do need a little bit more of that glue. And I'm gonna drop the glue in there on the end so that I can glue that end piece against the former in the middle, and then I'll just hold it again in place so that it fixes. And oh no, I've broken it again. That's really not good. Okay, going off camera.